Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Active Creative Perspectives. I'm Valerie, your guide on this transformative journey where a unique prism of life unfolds in full spectrum. And today we have beautiful Marissa.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
for
you, Valerie. It's
joining.
so great to be here.
And can you say where
Yeah,
you
I'm on
joining
the
us
East
from?
Coast of the US, so about an hour outside of New York, an hour outside of Philly, in a little valley in Pennsylvania.
So yes, and I'm on the other side of the world, and we're still, very connected, and we've never met each other, but our journey has collided and is still going on. And because of Marissa, I have started this podcast
Oh, I didn't know that.
overall. So it's been a journey. So I would love to ask you, with sitting in this beautiful place today in the evening, how did you come to this place, and what was your journey like to get here? And explain like on what are you doing and how did you
Yeah,
come to this
yeah, I'm happy
place?
to. I'll give you the 1,000-foot view because otherwise it will take me a week to give all the details. So I'll start with where I'm at and then I'll work a little bit backwards. So my name is Marissa Fontana. I'm a holistic business astrologer, and the work that I do is really focused on helping healers and creatives and mystics and coaches find their unique path to success, cut through all of the proven strategies. This is how you have to do business if you want to be successful, things that are really thrown at us, especially early in our entrepreneurial journey, and use their astrology chart to essentially design a completely unique business strategy for them that supports their energy, that uses their gifts, that gives them structure where they need structure instead of trying to piecemeal everyone else's strategies together to and hope that something works. So my background is I spent 10 years in corporate. Well, even earlier than that, I went to school for neuroscience and psychology. I've always been interested in the mind, in personality theory, in human behavior, and what makes us who we are, and the meaning of life, and all of that. And then out of school, I realized that, and Valerie, you and I talked about this actually on the interview you did with me. The mental health industry, the way that it is, especially in the US, would not allow me to help people in a way that felt good for me. And so I did a little bit of that right out of college, and then got to the point where I knew that it wasn't taking me in a direction I wanted to go. So I just kind of threw my hands up and ended up in a corporate job that was supposed to be temporary, that was just needed to pay my bills, pay my student loans. And then 10 years later, I had gathered a inc an incredible amount of experience, through all different parts of the company, through all different levels of the company, everything from customer service to business strategy to practice management. I went into the field and I worked with agencies and helped them design their operating models. I did customer experience and marketing. And I really think, looking back, it was all like divinely orchestrated because everything that I learned in corporate applies to my business today. And I didn't know that that's what was happening. I just thought that I couldn't stay in one place for too long. I got bored. I wanted to grow. I wanted to evolve. And so I bounced around a lot. And I really know now that I was being guided to essentially get like an MBA through experience so that I could then translate those skills and translate everything I learned, to help people who don't have that background be successful in business. So I am, what is today, the 26th? I'm almost a year out of corporate. So I left my corporate job March 31st of 2023. um, I gave my boss 9 months notice, which everyone thinks is insane, but basically what happened is I my corporate job wasn't something that I was running away from. I think a lot of people are like, "I hate corporate. I wanna go out and do my own thing," and Like, that was a little bit true for me, but I had been in a job, my last job that I had there was one that I really loved. I loved who I was working with. I loved my team. And so I thought, well, maybe I can make this work. Like, maybe I am supposed to be here. Maybe I can make the impact that I want to make in this corporate space, right? Because it needs a lot of work. Like, executive leadership needs some work, all of that stuff. And I thought, okay, maybe I just power through and I make the ripples in the corporate space. So I I applied to get a master's in business, an MBA. I was about 2 weeks into my first class, and I was writing a paper, and it was on something stupid. It was something really easy, like how to communicate effectively, like something that wasn't hard or complex, and I lost my mind. I had a complete, like, an utter emotional and mental breakdown, and then the thought of pursuing school was like, I could not even contemplate doing that. It was like I woke up to like, "What the fuck am I doing? Like, this isn't what I want. This isn't where I want my life to go. I don't wanna be in this box. I don't wanna have a boss anymore." And so that was really a turning point because I realized, okay, if I don't want to grow here, where else can I grow? And starting my own business was the answer to that. Now, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. I had a coaching certification, so I had been coaching some clients, just from, like, a career coaching perspective, a leadership perspective, career transitions, things like that, but nothing, like, at the volume that I would need to do it full time. Um, so then I thought about it for a little while, and I had secretly been pulling in astrology for those clients. Only though, like once we already established a relationship, once we established a rapport, and if they were really stuck on something and couldn't figure out like what they really wanted, I always posed like, "Hey, would you be interested if we pulled this in? If we pulled in this tool, let's see what it like, see what insights come out, and see how they feel, see what resonates." And when I started doing that, the transformations were instant. And I mean instant, it's because, like, not an instant in their external circumstance, but instant in their shift of perspective, in their belief of what they were capable of, in what was possible for their career, in their own potential. Because a lot of times I found in people's charts, the thing that was on their heart, the thing that they wanted to do anyway was perfectly aligned for them. But we just have all of these layers of conditioning of who we think we need to be and who we think what we need to do in order to be successful, that we, like, brush those little nudges and those little desires and those dreams to the side, and I found that astrology was really the tool that helped people say, "You know what? That's actually exactly what I wanna do." Um, I just didn't think I was capable of it. So, long story short, it took me about
And how did you yes, and how did you end up, like, doing astrology? So, was it always something that you did, or you came to it
yeah,
in a
so it was
way?
a h I mean, honestly, it was a hobby. It was something that I used for myself. I've always been a bit of a personal development junkie. I took all the personality tests, like the Myers-Briggs and the enneagrams. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I've always, for as long as I can remember, have been on a quest to understand who I am. Um, because I mean, this is getting a little bit deep now, but even growing up, I don't have much memory. I think that I've always been someone who just absorbed my surroundings and absorbed the expectations of other people, that, like, I didn't have an identity that was my own. I was the daughter, the partner, the the boss. Um and I could play all of those roles. My mom lovingly called me a chameleon growing up because I could be what anyone needed me to be at any given time, but I didn't know who I really was. And so when I got to maybe around college, I started looking at astrology, and and when I first, like, learned my astrology, I rejected it. I was like, "No." I just, like, purely rejected it. I'm a double Cancer with a Pisces moon, and I was like, "Cancers are moody," which is like, I am very moody. they're, like, too sensitive. I had, like, a lot of shame around my sensitivity, a lot of shame around, like, how big my feelings were because I had suppressed them down for so long. Um, and so, yeah, it took me some time to grow into it, but once I really started to understand, like, the light and the shadow of each side, the duality of the signs, how they all play together and how everything is interconnected, and started to understand it on a deep way, I really saw it as, like, not a tool that tells you who you are, but like a map to help you become who you're capable of being. It's like you in your highest expression of self with all of your lessons, with all of your gifts laid out for you, and then you get to apply it in a way that feels good in your life.
So by by being a chameleon and trying to put the masks of everyone who acknowledged you and seen you in a way that they wanted to see you, you found a tool, which is astrology, that you made a choice to decide who you want to be by applying those methods and um, conditioning that comes with
Yeah.
astrology as well.
Yeah, and for me, it's really, I mean, for me, and then the way that I use it with my clients too, it's just the first step. It's like the foot in the door to something so much bigger because it sparks an awakening. It sparks a, like I said before, a perspective shift. And once you can expand your perception, there's so much more stuff that can flow in terms of who we are and why we're here. And I draw a lot of inspiration, Valerie from Alice in Wonderland and that whole storyline and how when she's there, and I'm talking about the not the original cartoon, but the Tim Burton rendition in like the early 2000s. Um, when she's in Wonderland, like she doesn't remember who she is. And every all of the characters are like, she's not the right Alice, she's not the right Alice. This isn't her. We thought she was the hero and this is the wrong Alice. And the whole hero's journey that she goes on is an act of remembering and an act of, like, shedding what everyone else wanted her to be and really stepping into who she was, and so that I relate so deeply to that storyline, um, because it really is like an analogy of how I feel I came into my own identity, and had I not done that, I never in a million years thought I would have my own business. I was too shy, I was too introverted, I, like and so it really has unlocked more than I can really put into words, and that's what I see it do in the people that I work with as well. It's really just an incredible tool.
So if you are in on that heroic journey of Alice Vandal or in Wonderland, where would you think you're at the moment? At what
Oh, I
stage?
love that. So, you know what? I feel like, so in the hero's journey, the very last step is like coming back from the fight, the challenge, and bringing back all of the knowledge and the tools and the wisdom from that challenge. I feel like I'm there. I thought that I was there. I thought that leaving corporate was my challenge. Leaving corporate was like just the first step. When you start a business, when you are the product, your self-development accelerates more than anything else I've ever seen, anything else I've ever been through, because your business becomes a mirror to what's going on internally. So all of your shit, all of your shadow, all of your fear, all of the beliefs that you have about yourself that aren't true show up in your business. So creating a business that's successful is a process of transforming yourself from the inside out. I didn't know that. I don't think anyone knows that until you're in it, right? It's one of those things where we can hear people talking about it all day, but we think like, "Oh, well, I have the plan, so I'm gonna figure it out and it'll be fine." But once you're in it, you're like, "Holy shit, all the plans go out the window," and you really, it's like an unraveling, and so that you can be reborn as this into like a new identity. So, yeah, so now that I've been in business a year, And, like, boy, I have learned some stuff. I've learned about burnouts. I've learned about really, really bad investments, about trusting the wrong people. I feel like I'm at the point where I'm bringing all of that knowledge back now. And that's not to say that the next adventure isn't probably starting soon. But it does feel good to slow the spiral a little bit because I used to change like every other week. And now I feel really grounded in what I'm doing and really excited about the impact it's making and the traction that I'm getting. And that's just the impact that I'm seeing, right? I think one thing that's important to remember, especially as early entrepreneurs, there are so many people that you are impacting that you have no idea you are even paying attention to you. A lot of times, like podcasting, social media, we feel like we're shouting into the void and we're looking to the likes and the comments and the engagement to determine whether or not we're doing the thing right. And I just this past week went back to my old corporate job. 2 people that I were, like, on my very first team were retiring. And so I went to their retirement party, and so many people were like, "Marissa, I've been following you since you left, like, you're doing such incredible things. I'm so inspired by your journey." Not one of them ever engages with my stuff, right? Like, I had no idea, and so I think it's important to, like, really and it's so easy to say and so hard to do, but just trust that you're exactly where you need to be. You're impacting the people that are here to learn from you, and surrender what you think this has to look like, so that you can be open to the an opportunity that's even better than what you could have planned for yourself.
So it's just like that watching the movie of Alice going through all the rooms and, commenting and liking her story. By leaving the corporate world and entering, the wild and crazy life of business
Yeah,
owner.
exactly. That's exactly how it feels. It's like it was like the door opened to Wonderland, and then it was like, "Wait a second, like, where do I go from here? Who am I? What am I doing? Am I sure who?" Even just a few weeks ago, I was on a walk, and things are going so well, like, my engagement is even all the things I just said didn't matter are, like, coming through anyway. So I know now more than ever that things are working. And still, I was out for a walk and I just had this moment of like, what was I thinking? I left my corporate job and I'm a professional astrologer. Am I out of my fucking mind? Like, why would I do that to myself?
Reality
Yeah,
check,
but
yes.
then, all of the other metrics of our success, right? It's the freedom, it's the autonomy to work with who you wanna work with. Like, I get to basically talk to my friends all day, and we do business together, whether we're clients or collaborators. I get to choose who I give my energy to, who I, like, hang out with, spend time with, who I talk to. That to me is invaluable. That type of freedom is invaluable, and it's made me very selective and very discerning, but the more selective I come and the more valuable I realize that is to me, the more aligned people are coming in. So I'm, like, waking up excited because I get to read for someone today, or I get to have a podcast interview with my friend across the world. Right, and it's all of those little things that were the reason I left in the first place. If I just wanted to make money, I would have never left. Like, entrepreneurship wouldn't have been on my radar because I was doing fine, and so I think it's important to, like, have those moments of remembering what you're really doing this for, on a personal level and global level. Yeah.
And then you also have to trust, you also have the tool of astrology that gives you the overlooking
Mm,
capacity to see what's happening in the world in general with, the planets and the
yeah.
cycles. Um, and that gives you trust to understand that, you have more knowledge than probably if you are
Mhm,
in
mhm.
corporate world trying to figure out the next stock market change. Um, So in that term, you're also using human design, which is also based on
Yeah,
astrology. Is
so
that
human
right?
design brings together, I think, like 3 or 4 different wisdom traditions, systems, like the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, astrology. I was using human design, but then I realized, like, and it's in my chart too, like, I'm here to master something. And so what was happening is, like, astrology was, like, where my roots were, and then I was getting distracted by the shiny object that is human design because it's popular now. So I don't use it as much. It is a layer I'll pull in if a client is, like, really struggling with something, like, I'll look at their energy type, or I'll look at their decision-making authority, and it always complements. I never have found a contradiction between human design and astrology, which makes sense because astrology is part of what feeds the human design system. Um, so I think it's important to understand the basics of human design, but if I'm being really, really honest in my comparison of the 2, human design is a little more rigid than I like to be, because it's like you have this gate or you don't, you have this channel or you don't. Whereas astrology, is as much of a science as it is an art. And so I love the potential, of astrology and the infinite ways that it can really be interpreted and the ways that it can express and play out. So I basically made a choice to, like, double down on the astrology and continue to just focus on that. But not totally abandon the human design because I think a lot of people know their human design now, so I do have a basic understanding of it to make sure that I'm guiding in a way that's aligned with both of those systems.
And with your ability and your talent, to use those tools from both worlds and combining them, do you sometimes feel like you're creating a new way of doing business, which is still has so much to go forward and still is in an evolving stage? But you are the icebreaker, the first um, explorer that goes into that world, and it's usually the hardest
Yeah.
job.
Well, I never thought of it that way, because I have found other business astrologers, but to your point, I have not found another business astrologer that approaches this the way that I do, or has the corporate background that I do. I think that was probably one of, like, my when I work with my copywriter, like, "What's your USP?" Like, I've done the corporate thing. I know the business stuff. Um, I know strategy. I know client experience, right? I know all of those things. I've seen it all. Um, Not to say I've seen it all. I wouldn't call myself an expert because I'm self-taught and I continue to learn every day. Um, but yeah, like in human design, I'm a manifester. I'm a 6-3 profile with manifester initiating energy type. So a lot of that, as I started to understand it, was like, I am supposed to go first a lot of times. And I am supposed to do the thing and mess it up and learn from it and then teach from it, right? And I think probably uh one of the things that not even resonated, but, like, gave me the most permission when I started studying human design was the fact that I have a 3 line in my profile, and the 3 line is all about, like, experimentation. And I read somewhere that when you have a 3 line, and I think this is true for everyone, but especially for people with that line, is, like, there is no failure. There everything that we do is an experiment, and so whether we hit the goal or we don't hit the goal, the knowledge and the experience gained from that experiment is equally as valuable, whether it's pass fail. And arguably, the fail is actually more valuable than the pass anyway, because there's more lessons to be learned there. There's more data to be collected and analyzed from the things that don't work versus the things that do work. Um, so yeah, I just got really comfortable with going first, which is not something that I think even a year ago I would have been able to say. Um because I trust in my ability to figure it out. I've proven to myself that I'm resilient and I can figure it out. And I've always been able to find the thread, the lesson, the benefit, the silver lining in every experience. That's like what my family and my friends come to me for when they're like struggling with things. I like help them see the lesson and like the evolution and the growth that can come through any experience. So I think that's really helped me as well in trusting that like I'm allowed to mess up, right? Part of my purpose is being brave enough to mess up so that I can help people maybe get to their finish line a little bit easier and a little bit more smoothly because I've tried all the ways. I know what doesn't work and I know what works, and then I can pass that wisdom along.
And then with people that come to you, what do you find like the most common traces, and what are they challenging, uh, or what they going through that made them realize to come to you in the first
That's
place?
a great question. A lot of them, it's hard. A lot of them say, "Marissa, something feels off. I don't know what it is, but something feels off. I just dropped $10,000 on a strategist. I've done the marketing. I had the website designed, and something doesn't feel right, and I can't figure out what it is." Right? Like usually it's something like that because the actual root is different for everyone, but on a general scale, it's a sign of misalignment. And alignment is something that I think is talked about. It's like one of those buzzwords now in like the spiritual world, alignment and abundance and manifestation and all of those things. It's like, what does it actually mean? Right? Can we put some like layman's terms to these things? So alignment to me and the way that I use astrology is like understanding everyone's unique energy and building a business that is not only like that supports that energy, right? So if you need long-term security in order to feel sustained, like flying by the seat of your pants and doing something different every day probably isn't a good strategy for you, right? But some people need that. Some people thrive in those environments. And so it's people who have tried the cookie cutter shit, who have tried the guru strategies and it's not working, or it is working and it doesn't feel good, who are ready to like step into doing things their way and just need a little leg up and figuring out what their way actually is and the structure and the strategy that is totally unique to them, which is just so fun for me to do. If I'm being honest, like my job is a dream. Like my job is an absolute dream, because I love helping people find that discovery, both from like a personal development perspective, but then also have a really tangible outcome that will be a container and be something to ground into as they move forward. And I'm telling you, the alignment that comes through, or I should say, the evidence of alignment. I had a client like 10x her revenue in 30 days, which is mind-blowing. I didn't know that that was gonna be the result. It was bananas. I've had like people who were at 0 that suddenly have an influx of clients just by making a pivot. I had someone come to me who was like, I've been doing all of these discovery calls, but no one is buying, no one is buying, no one is buying." And we just did like one reading, and the next day, her 2 discovery calls were paying clients. And so it's stuff, and all it was a perspective shift. Like, it doesn't have to be this massive change, and I know that doing the subconscious work is really popular right now. The hypnosis, the EFT, and I love all of those tools. Our subconscious is where we manifest from. We all know that. I used to be in that world too, but I like faster, like more efficient results. And there is something about astrology that instantly changes your belief about yourself. And so the subconscious, like, just kind of falls in line. And I shouldn't say that it's so instant, but it feels instant. It like unlocks something even though it's happening at a conscious level. It's the belief. There's something about seeing your blueprint in paper in front of, not literal paper, right? I do it digitally, but seeing your blueprint and understanding what it means, that gives you like this permission to be radically who you are. Um and then like it takes the smallest pivot And then once you start seeing results and you build that trust and you recognize that it's actually working, like it snowballs and it's faster than anything that I've ever worked with, to be honest with you.
And it's a similar story to being that chameleon that, it tries to fit into different category shapes. And then um, having someone to show you your structure and then deciding of who you are and then acknowledging from the universe that you're on the right path. And every for someone it's money, for someone just a sense and feeling comfortable with who they are gives them that trust on doing what they meant to be doing. And do you find that's what you found for yourself, and now you giving that gift to others on taking that, chameleon and
Mhm.
making one color that belongs to you, and acknowledging and being proud of it?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great way to think about it. I I do think that because I struggled so much with understanding who I was and really coming into my own identity, um, and being a chameleon, I can see people really quickly. Um, and there's something about being seen for who you are and accepted for it, right? Like masks are off, performing is off. I can tell what you're struggling with and like it's okay. So many people come to me who I'm shocked they're knocking on my door because online they look wildly successful. And then when we start working together, it's like they're either burnt out or the clients aren't coming in or they have the engagement but the money isn't there. And so I think that my experience and being able to, like, read people and meet them where they are absolutely helps in my business. It absolutely helps in my client relationships. Um, but I do think, like, being bold and being really loud about, like, who I am, not even loud because that's not really my style, but just, like, really authentic to who I am. My like, I flow with my business. My copy isn't perfect. My like, I do most of it myself. I don't have a content strategy. I don't have planned posts, like, but it's working for me, and the responses that I've gotten were like, "Marissa, your posts are so authentic. Your content's so authentic. I open your emails every time because it's like I'm talking to a friend." I'm like, "That's alignment for me." That's not might be not alignment for you, but that's alignment for me. Um, and so, yeah, I think that because I've tried on all of the different masks and I know what it's like to not feel seen or, like, not even be understood, but because you don't let people see you, like, I know what that feels like. And so I can help, I guess, normalize it a little bit in my clients to, like, so they don't feel like they have to perform anymore. Or some of them secretly want to add some layer of spirituality into their business, but there's a lot of wounding around showing up that way. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I went on a bit of a tangent. So, like, steer me back.
And if you go back to those times when your mom
Yeah.
is telling you, of, you can fit in anywhere, how would you see yourself from there to now? And what color would you
What
call
color would
yourself
I
now?
call
What
myself?
color comes up?
Ooh. So Man, and I do this a lot, and I can't say too much because I'll probably start crying. I do a lot of inner child work. I don't have very clear memories of my childhood, and I didn't have a bad childhood. I had great parents. Like, I didn't have any trauma really. Like, no big T trauma. I had a great childhood. I was just so sensitive, like that I picked up everything from everyone else. Um, oh, sorry, it like
Hmm.
cut out. It looked like we okay. Um, So I think I work with my inner child a lot. I talk about this a little bit publicly now. Like, I have a spirit team that I work with very regularly. My inner child's on that team. Like, we hang out all the time and so it's hard to really even remember who she was before we did all of this healing. Right? Like, I vaguely remember like the little like shell a little sponge of just trying to make everyone happy and absorbing everyone else's shit, but now I'd like to think that we are, like, fluorescent, that we like, that it's, like, iridescence, like, that's the color whenever I go into meditation, we're just, like, in a pool of iridescence, and while that sounds like I'm still being a chameleon, it's more about, like, I'm
And if
shining
you
that.
look at
Yeah,
your
sorry, go ahead.
yes, and if you look at your visuals, and all the,
Yeah. My
um,
brand.
branding that
Yeah,
you have,
yeah.
yes, it's no there's no particular color. As a, as a branding, you would have
Mhm.
that particular one color that is your
Yeah,
brand color. So you have a very spectrum, like
yeah.
holographic branding that can be any color that you decide, and that's the journey that you are on selecting that color that you feel like today, and using, astrology and any other tools to decide who you decide
Yeah,
to be in that moment and what do
yeah.
you want. And it's beautiful, and helping others to decide as well, and seeing and showing them their
Mhm,
true color on they can acknowledge and be. And I think astrology and any other tools that you will use as part of your being would be useful in your hands based on how you
yeah.
see
Yeah,
them.
I love that.
And yes, and it's, it is a tool that you mastering. You would be, in corporate, you mastered that part of it. And now you have mastered
Mhm,
your own tool that you picked. Not nobody else
mhm.
told you to do that.
Yeah, my family my I don't know that when my family talks about my business, when I talk about my business with my family, I'm a business coach, right? Because that's language, and it's not that I'm hiding it. They know. Like, they're like, "Oh, Marissa's being Marissa," or like sometimes I space out and they're like, "Oh, where'd you go?" Right? That they know who I am. They just don't have the language, and they have their own like fears and beliefs around doing spiritual work that they're like not quite there yet. But I forget why I said that, but I wanted to bring it back to another point that you said before in like deciding who you want to be. And I think looking at any tool from that perspective is so important because especially when you're on a journey of trying to figure out who you are and you're not really confident about who you are, like we so lean on external validation, right? To like even if it's astrology. Astrology is meant to be a tool, a map to help you rediscover yourself, not tell you who you're supposed to be. Your desire and your like inner knowing and how you feel about things is so important to tune into that. Like I would rather read for someone and they're like, actually, Marissa, I'm this other different thing than them just blindly follow what I'm interpreting. Right. Because I have my own lens that I interpret things through that might not be reality for them. So I always start and like it's the quote I use from Alice in Wonderland. Every single one of my readings starts with this quote is that this is your dream. You decide where you go from here and you make the path, right? That desire, I truly believe that we have free will. I believe that we can create whatever we want to create. There's nothing set in stone. We'll get to where we want to go, right? It's that belief in ourselves. And so even though astrology tells us like where we have strengths and where we might need some help, I don't think it's so rigid, and I know a lot of astrologers would totally disagree with me. I don't do predictive astrology for this exact reason. I believe that our ability to create is stronger than any of the imprinting that we have, right? Working in harmony with the cosmic energy that gets imprinted on us at birth makes things flow a lot easier, right? Like it makes the ride a lot more fun. But if we really want to push in another direction, we can push in another direction. We have the will, the free will to follow whatever we desire to follow. And I think that's so important to like really underline and emphasize because there's shadow in any industry, right? But there is some shadow in the spiritual industry as well. Like you are your own guru. I forget who says that. But, like, make sure you don't give your identity, like, in the hands of someone else who's interpreting for you, right? Whether it's astrology, human design, intuitive guidance, any of that. Like, you know more than you think you do about yourself and your path, and it's just a matter of being able to, like, tap into that and listen to it.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing this journey. And can you please tell us how
Yeah.
to find you and get in
Yeah, so
contact
the
with
best
you?
place to find me is, believe it or not, LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time. A lot of people think I'm crazy there, or no, a lot of people think I'm crazy for being there, but I truly believe that there is a community of professionals who are curious about this stuff, who want to understand it in a way that makes sense to them, that they can apply it in their practical business, like the CEOs, the entrepreneurs. And I wanna make it accessible to those people, right? So LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time. I'm really good at just focusing on one thing instead of being scattered. So if you wanna find me there, that's great. If you're not on LinkedIn, I did just start an email list. So I will give you the list to join that list. I don't do like the marketing, nurturing funnels, and that's constant selling. That's not my vibe. It's really, truly just a way for me to stay connected with people outside of social media because I need breaks from social media. I don't want you to have to spend all day on your phone scrolling. Like, that's not what, like, the world I want to create, the business I want to create. So I'm starting to lean into a mailing list so that, like, when I have something to share with you, whether it's a story, whether it's an offer, I have a direct line with you and vice versa. So, yeah, I will give you the link to join that mailing list. I call it the inner circle just because I like to think it's my little group of pen pals that know all of my secrets about what's going on in business. So,
Yes, and I do. And as you know, because I'm on the other side of
yeah.
this earth, ahead of you a little bit. Um, I do like to join your live streams, which I get to watch in recordings. But I find it so inspiring to create
Mhm.
that circle. And as you said, it is important to stay away from social media because you know if you have given inspiration from social media, it's one thing, but if it's a drainage that you put your energy into, it's good to have that inner circle rather than use
Yeah.
your time wisely. Yes, thank you so much for this beautiful journey, and I'm sure we will come back to your story of Alice in Wonderland and see where she's
Thank you
gonna
so
go
much.
further, what room she's
Thank you.
gonna
This was so
enter.
fun. Thank you for having me.